I had spent the last few years feeling invisible in my own home. My husband, Mark, was always busy with work, often coming home late or not at all. The sound of his footsteps in the hallway had become a rare pleasure, replaced instead by the hum of the television or the rustle of pages from a book I never finished. I often found myself staring out of the kitchen window at the neighbors' lively gatherings, their laughter echoing through our quiet house. It was during one such evening that I stumbled upon a box tucked away in our attic, filled with old love letters from Mark to a woman I didn't recognize. The words were filled with passion and longing, emotions that seemed to have evaporated from our marriage. A family gathering brought me face to face with my husband's nephew, Jake. He had grown up considerably since I last saw him at family functions. He was now a young man with an easy smile and an infectious laugh. As we chatted over barbecue, I felt a spark of excitement that had been missing for so long. We shared stories about our lives, his recent travels and my mundane routine, and I couldn't help but notice how attentive he was. It felt refreshing to be seen and heard again. The evening ended too soon, but not before we exchanged numbers under the pretext of staying in touch about family matters. Days passed without much change until I twisted my ankle while gardening. The pain was sharp but manageable, however, it provided me with an excuse to reach out to Jake for help. He arrived quickly, bringing with him a sense of relief that filled my home like fresh air. As he helped me navigate around the house and offered to assist me in the shower to avoid slipping, laughter bubbled between us, lightening the weight of my loneliness. But guilt crept in as I realized how easy it was to enjoy his company, how much I craved it. Things took an unexpected turn when Mark called to say he would be home earlier than planned due to an unexpected meeting cancellation. Panic surged through me as Jake and I exchanged frantic glances. He needed to leave before Mark arrived. In haste, we said our goodbyes just as Mark walked through the door. His presence instantly shifted the atmosphere in our home back into its usual silence, leaving me unsettled yet exhilarated from what had just transpired. The next morning felt heavy with unspoken tension as I busied myself with chores around the house while trying to shake off the previous day's events. Each time my phone buzzed with a message from Jake, my heart raced and my palms grew sweaty. We began exchanging playful texts about mundane topics, what we were cooking for dinner or how much we disliked grocery shopping, but there was an underlying thrill beneath every word that made me feel alive again. My husband noticed something off about me, his brow furrowed during breakfast as he asked if everything was all right. "You seem distracted," he said, pouring himself another cup of coffee while looking over his newspaper. "Just tired," I replied curtly while trying not to meet his gaze directly. The truth was that Jake's presence lingered in my mind like a ghost whispering secrets that only I could hear. As days turned into weeks filled with stolen moments and secretive exchanges between Jake and me, I felt myself slipping further away from Mark without fully realizing it until one evening when Jake suggested we meet at a local cafe known for its vintage decor and fresh pastries, a place where we could talk freely away from prying eyes. The thought excited me but also terrified me. What if someone saw us? My heart raced at both possibilities. I made up my mind. This rendezvous would be different. I would finally confront what had been brewing between us since that first kiss during my recovery after the accident, a kiss that lingered on my lips long after it happened. But just as excitement built within me for our clandestine meeting at Café Delights on Maple Street, reality struck when Mark announced he would take me out on Saturday night for dinner, something we hadn't done in ages due to his hectic schedule at work. "Just you and me," he said brightly as if trying to rekindle something lost between us. The invitation hung heavy in the air like an anchor pulling down on both sides of my heart, one side longing for familiarity while another craved adventure and connection outside these four walls, suffocating under unfulfilled promises. How could I choose between two lives? As Saturday approached, confusion clouded my thoughts. Each moment spent planning dinner left little room for consideration of what lay ahead with Jake later that evening after Mark left for his business trip early Sunday morning. I stood by the window overlooking our quiet street filled with blooming flowers, their colors vibrant against gray pavement, as uncertainty gnawed at me like hunger pangs demanding attention yet avoiding resolution altogether. The final decision loomed closer than ever before. Should I follow through with this new path or remain tethered by loyalty? The weight pressed upon me until it became unbearable, a decision needed making soon before everything unraveled completely. And then came Saturday night, the moment where everything would change forever. I stood in the dimly lit bathroom, my heart racing. The sound of water running from the shower mixed with the distant hum of the television in the living room. I had just finished wrapping my leg in a bandage after my gardening mishap, and now I needed help. My husband was supposed to be working late, but I had that nagging feeling that something was off. "Do you need help?" came a voice from behind me. It was my husband's nephew, Mark. He had come over to check on me, just as we had planned. The tension between us crackled like static electricity. I nodded, feeling both relief and trepidation. As he stepped closer, I could see concern etched on his face. "I can help you get in the shower if you want," he offered gently. My breath caught in my throat. The invitation hung heavy in the air, it felt both innocent and dangerously tempting. "Are you sure?" I asked, trying to maintain a semblance of decorum despite my racing heart. "Of course," he replied with a reassuring smile. "It'll be quick." The moment felt surreal as he helped me into the shower stall, carefully adjusting the water temperature before stepping back to give me privacy. As I washed away the dirt and grime from my day, I could feel his presence lingering just outside the curtain, an unspoken connection forming between us. Then it happened, our eyes met through the thin fabric as I turned to grab a towel. In that instant, we kissed. It was brief yet electrifying, our lips brushing against each other with an urgency that surprised us both. Suddenly, laughter erupted from outside, our neighbors' children were playing in their yard. Their carefree joy pierced through my moment of bliss and brought me back to reality. I quickly turned off the water and wrapped myself in a towel, panic coursing through me. What if someone saw? I whispered as I stepped out of the shower. Mark looked equally flustered but excited at our shared secret. "They didn't see anything," he assured me with a grin that made my heart race again. Just then, the front door creaked open unexpectedly. My husband's voice echoed through the house, he was home early from work. My stomach dropped as dread washed over me like cold water. "Hey. Are you okay?" he called out casually while moving toward the bathroom. "Yeah. Just cleaning up." I managed to shout back, trying to sound nonchalant despite my racing pulse. Mark shot me a panicked look before slipping quietly out of sight into another room. My heart raced as I wrapped myself tighter in the towel and took a deep breath to steady myself before facing my husband. He appeared at the bathroom doorframe moments later, looking concerned but relaxed. "I thought you'd be resting," he said casually while leaning against the doorframe. "I was just getting cleaned up," I replied with forced cheerfulness. His gaze lingered on me for a moment longer than necessary before he nodded slowly. "Okay then." He turned away but paused before leaving entirely, glancing back at me one last time as if sensing something amiss. Once he was gone, adrenaline flooded through me as I sought Mark's eyes across the room where he stood hidden behind an open door, his expression mirroring mine, shock mixed with exhilaration at what had just transpired. "We kissed," I whispered urgently when we were alone again, a phrase that felt monumental yet terrifying all at once. "I know," he replied softly with an almost boyish grin creeping across his face despite our precarious situation. "Your uncle is going to notice something is off," I warned him anxiously while trying to gather my thoughts about how reckless we'd been moments ago. Mark shrugged slightly but kept his tone serious as he responded, "We'll figure it out together." The reality of our situation sank deeper into my bones like leaden weights pulling at my conscience, but amid all this turmoil and guilt came an unexpected thrill, being wanted again after years of feeling invisible within my marriage. As days passed following that fateful night filled with whispered secrets and stolen glances whenever we crossed paths at family gatherings or casual encounters around town, the tension grew palpable between us like a tightly wound coil ready to snap at any moment under pressure from outside forces beyond our control. One evening while sipping coffee together at our favorite cafe downtown, an old place adorned with vintage decor where we often escaped for brief moments away from prying eyes, Mark leaned closer than usual across our table filled with pastries and steaming mugs of coffee brewed fresh each morning by friendly baristas who knew us by name now after frequent visits over time spent there together sharing laughter amidst nervous energy bubbling beneath surface tensions surrounding us constantly. Lately, since everything began unfolding so rapidly between us all too soon, I've been thinking, Mark started hesitantly before trailing off momentarily lost in thought, perhaps contemplating implications surrounding choices made thus far leading up until now. What about? I prompted gently, hoping not to push him too hard but needing clarity regarding what lay ahead for us both moving forward together amidst uncertainty looming ever closer around corners, waiting patiently unseen until revealed completely without warning. Sometimes catching unsuspecting souls off guard unexpectedly when least expected, causing chaos within lives already teetering precariously along edges, precariously balanced between light shadows cast upon them by choices made previously long ago. Perhaps unknowingly leading down paths unforeseen until reaching crossroads, forcing decisions requiring action taken promptly lest remain stagnant forevermore, trapped within confines created solely by fear alone, suffocating slowly day by day, year after year. I think we should run away together. His words hung heavily between us like an unspoken promise laced with danger, wrapped tightly around hope, igniting sparks flying high above heads, spinning wildly, caught up amidst whirlwind emotions swirling around, hearts beating wildly against chests pounding loudly, echoing fears hidden deep inside, longing desperately escape mundane existence lived day after day without purpose anymore, beyond mere survival instincts driving lives forward aimlessly, seeking fulfillment found nowhere near familiar surroundings anymore. But what about your uncle? What about everything we have here? His gaze hardened slightly, meeting mine directly, challenging doubts lingering, still clouding judgment, casting shadows over possibilities explored previously, left unexamined too long, perhaps out fear facing consequences arising, inevitably stemming actions taken willingly despite knowing risks involved fully beforehand, yet unable resist allure, drawing closer every moment spent together, igniting flames burning brightly, illuminating darkness surrounding hearts yearning desperately, connection once lost forevermore now rekindled anew, igniting passions reignited fervently, blazing brightly, illuminating paths ahead, beckoning forth adventures awaiting beyond horizons unseen, previously obscured by layers built over time, shielding truths hidden deep beneath surfaces, merely waiting patiently discover light once more, shining brightly, illuminating roads ahead, beckoning forth journeys yet traveled, leading unknown destinations, awaiting discovery, eagerly craving exploration, enriching lives lived fully, embracing experiences shared intimately together, forging bonds unbreakable, crafted carefully amidst chaos erupting everywhere around them, threatening tear apart, foundations built upon love, trust forged steadily throughout years past. Before answering him fully, however, suddenly realization struck hard, crashing down upon realization, dawning slowly, creeping forth, revealing harsh truths lurking beneath surface, waiting patiently, finally unveiled, exposing vulnerabilities hidden long buried beneath layers, shielding hearts, protecting souls fragile enough withstand storms raging fiercely, threatening tear apart everything built painstakingly over years past, leaving nothing behind, remnants shattered, hopes, dreams lost forevermore. Scattered winds blowing freely, carrying whispers, memories fading slowly into nothingness, lost forevermore, unless fought fiercely against, relentlessly refusing allow darkness consume light, shining brightly, illuminating paths ahead leading toward brighter tomorrows, filled promise possibilities awaiting discovery, eagerly embraced, wholeheartedly cherished, forevermore cherished deeply within souls intertwined, destined remain united, eternally bound together through trials, tribulations faced bravely. fought courageously, never backing down, standing strong, unwavering, resolute, determined, forge ahead boldly regardless obstacles encountered along way. But then came another twist. A sudden phone call interrupted everything, abruptly shattering fragile peace temporarily achieved, restoring balance, harmony sought desperately amidst chaos swirling wildly around them, threatening engulf completely, leaving nothing behind, remnants, scattered memories, fading slowly into nothingness, lost forevermore, unless fought fiercely against, relentlessly refusing allow darkness consume light, shining brightly, illuminating paths ahead, leading toward brighter tomorrows. Filled promise, possibilities awaiting discovery, eagerly embraced, wholeheartedly cherished, forevermore cherished deeply within souls intertwined, destined remain united, eternally bound together through trials, tribulations faced, bravely fought courageously, never backing down, standing strong, unwavering, resolute, determined, forge ahead boldly regardless obstacles encountered along way. Hello? Mark answered, suddenly shifting focus entirely away from previous conversation, abruptly redirecting attention elsewhere, bringing forth new reality, confronting them head-on, forcing confrontations arise necessary, addressed immediately lest linger unresolved indefinitely, causing further complications arise later downline, complicating matters further, exacerbating tensions already simmering beneath surface, threatening boil over uncontrollably, spilling forth chaos unleashed, wreak havoc, lives intertwined, irrevocably, forever changed, irrevocably altered course, destiny laid out before them, unfolding rapidly beyond control, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating, dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culmination, events set motion long ago, spiraling downward, fast approaching, inevitable climax, culminating dramatic conclusion awaited, eagerly anticipated, anxiously approached, finally reached, culminati. The phone call ended abruptly. A sense of foreboding washed over us both simultaneously, flooding hearts racing wildly against chests pounding loudly, echoing fears hidden deep inside, longing desperately escape mundane existence lived day after day without purpose anymore beyond mere survival. Instincts driving lives forward aimlessly, seeking fulfillment found nowhere near familiar surroundings anymore. The phone call ended abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in the air. I could feel the tension between us, thick and palpable. The kiss we shared lingered on my lips, a reminder of what we had crossed into. My heart raced as I glanced at the clock, my husband would be home soon. Maybe we should talk, he suggested, his voice low and serious. I nodded, unsure of what to say next. Guilt gnawed at me, but so did the thrill of this newfound connection. The door creaked open slightly, making us both jump. It was just the wind, but it felt like an omen. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. I can't stop thinking about that moment, he admitted softly. When our lips met. I shivered at the memory, caught between desire and fear. This was all so reckless, yet exhilarating. We decided to sneak into the kitchen for coffee, hoping to ease the tension with something familiar. The aroma filled my senses as I poured 2 cups, our hands brushing against each other briefly, a spark igniting again. I never thought we'd end up here, he said quietly as we settled at the small table. Suddenly, a noise from outside made us freeze. My heart sank as I realized it could be my husband returning early from work. He might be back any minute, I whispered urgently, glancing towards the window. The last thing I wanted was to get caught in this precarious situation. I'll hide in the pantry, he suggested quickly, his eyes wide with urgency. He slipped away just as I heard the unmistakable sound of keys jingling at the front door. Panic surged through me as I fumbled with my coffee cup. As my husband walked in, he looked surprised to see me alone in the kitchen. Hey. You're home early, I said too cheerfully, trying to mask my anxiety. Yeah, things wrapped up quicker than expected, he replied casually but eyed me suspiciously. What are you up to? His gaze lingered on me a moment longer than necessary. Just making coffee, I said while forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. Inside me churned a storm of emotions, guilt mixed with excitement over what had just happened moments before. As we chatted about mundane topics, his day at work and plans for dinner, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off between us now. My heart raced every time I thought of him finding out about my secret meetings with his nephew. Meanwhile, in the pantry, tension hung thick in the air as he listened closely to our conversation. Would he dare come out? What if my husband noticed something amiss? Just then, I caught sight of something shiny peeking out from under a pile of papers on the counter, a letter addressed to me in familiar handwriting. My stomach dropped as realization hit. It was from him, my husband's nephew. It must have slipped from my pocket earlier when we kissed or when we were rushing around after that call ended abruptly. I quickly snatched it up and tucked it behind my back just as my husband turned towards me again with an inquisitive look on his face. What's that? He asked sharply. Nothing. The word escaped before I could think better of it. Panic surged through me again as his eyes narrowed suspiciously. You sure? You seem nervous. I swallowed hard and attempted to maintain eye contact while feeling like everything was spiraling out of control around me. Suddenly there was movement behind me, the pantry door creaked open slowly. My heart raced even faster than before as I turned around to see him emerging cautiously from his hiding spot. What are you doing here? My voice came out sharper than intended. Both men froze for an instant before chaos erupted in our small kitchen space. My husband's face twisted into confusion and disbelief while his nephew looked equally startled by being caught mid-reveal, caught between 2 worlds colliding violently together right before our eyes. What is going on? My husband's voice rose sharply with anger laced through every word directed toward both of us standing there awkwardly like deer caught in headlights unable to escape whatever fate awaited next. Before any answers could be exchanged or explanations given amidst rising tensions brewing inside that tiny kitchen filled with secrets long kept hidden away from prying eyes. I stood frozen, the weight of my choices crashing down on me. My heart raced as I glanced at my husband, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. The air felt thick with unspoken words, and I could barely breathe. I had never imagined it would come to this moment, caught between 2 worlds, both threatening to unravel. What were you two doing? He demanded, his voice cold and sharp. I could see the hurt etched across his face, a reflection of betrayal that I never wanted to cause. The nephew shifted beside me, his expression a mix of concern and fear. "We were just talking," I replied weakly, hoping to diffuse the situation. But deep down, I knew it was too late for half-truths. "Talking?" "It didn't look like just talking," he shot back, crossing his arms tightly over his chest. My mind raced as I tried to formulate a response that would satisfy him without revealing the depth of our connection. The last thing I wanted was for him to know how much I craved the attention and affection that had been missing from our marriage for so long. Suddenly, my husband's gaze shifted to the coffee table where a letter lay partially hidden beneath a magazine. It was one of the love letters from the nephew that had slipped from my grasp earlier. Panic surged through me as he reached for it, pulling it into view. "What is this?" His tone turned accusatory as he unfolded the paper. I felt my stomach drop as he read aloud the words meant only for me. "I've always admired you." The nephew stepped forward, trying to explain himself, but my husband held up a hand to silence him. "You've crossed a line," he said with an icy calmness that sent shivers down my spine. The tension in the room escalated as my husband's anger morphed into something more profound, disappointment mixed with disbelief. "I can't believe you would betray me like this," he said quietly, shaking his head in disbelief. The truth of my actions began to sink in deeper than any guilt could have ever reached. As if sensing an opportunity slipping away, the nephew interjected, "We spent night together at my place last week." The admission hung heavy in the air between us like a storm cloud ready to burst. My heart raced at his boldness. Part of me admired it while another part felt desperate regret. "Enough." My husband's voice thundered through the room once more. "You both need to leave." His command left no room for argument or discussion. It was final and absolute. With heavy hearts and even heavier feet, we stepped outside into the cool evening air. As we walked away from what had been our home, a place filled with memories now tainted, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss wash over me like a tidal wave crashing onto shore. "What now?" the nephew asked softly as we reached his car parked along the street under flickering streetlights. The question hung between us like an unfulfilled promise or a dream long forgotten. "I don't know," I admitted honestly, feeling utterly lost in this mess we had created together. A part of me wanted desperately to run back inside and explain everything, to beg for forgiveness or at least understanding, but another part knew that would only deepen the wounds already inflicted. "We can figure this out," he suggested gently, reaching out to touch my arm reassuringly, a gesture that sent warmth coursing through me despite everything else crumbling around us. But then reality hit hard again as I remembered my husband waiting inside, his disappointment still fresh in my mind, and how easily everything could fall apart if we continued down this path together without thought or caution. "I need time," I finally said with determination breaking through despair's hold on me. "Time to think about what's next." He nodded slowly but didn't move away from me just yet. Instead, he leaned closer and whispered softly, "I'll be here when you're ready." With one last lingering look exchanged between us, one filled with uncertainty yet tinged with hope, I turned away from him and walked back toward home while every step felt heavier than before. Inside awaited confrontation and consequences far beyond anything either of us could fully comprehend, yet still looming ominously ahead like dark clouds gathering before a storm ready to unleash its fury upon those caught unprepared below. As I entered the house, the familiar smells of dinner cooking filled the air, but they did little to ease the knot tightening in my stomach. My husband was already home, sitting at the kitchen table with a newspaper spread out before him. He looked up, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "You're back early," he said, folding the paper. "I decided to take a stroll," I replied, trying to sound casual while my heart raced. The weight of my secret felt heavier than ever. The thought of my nephew's kiss lingered in my mind like an echo that wouldn't fade. I moved toward the sink, pretending to wash my hands, but all I could think about was how close I had come to crossing a line. Just as I turned off the tap, my husband spoke again. "I've been thinking about our weekend plans. How about we go away for a couple of days?" His tone was light, but it felt like a trap ready to spring on me. A weekend trip meant time away from everything, time away from my nephew and the thrill of our connection. "Sounds nice," I managed to say, though dread pooled in my stomach at the thought of losing precious moments with him. My mind raced with possibilities and fears as I dried my hands on a dish towel. Later that evening, after dinner had settled and we were curled up on the couch watching an old movie, I received a text from my nephew, "We need to talk." My fingers hesitated over the screen as panic surged through me. What could he possibly want? Did he sense that time was running out? "Who are you texting?" My husband's voice cut through my thoughts like glass shattering on tile. "Just a friend," I replied quickly, knowing full well it was only half true. The tension in his gaze made me uneasy. He could sense something amiss. "Everything okay?" he asked, leaning closer as if searching for hidden truths in my expression. "Yes," I lied again, feeling guilt gnawing at me from within while desperately wanting to escape this moment. But before I could think of an excuse to leave the room and respond to my nephew's message, there was a knock at the door. My heart raced as I exchanged glances with my husband before getting up to answer it. To my surprise, it was my nephew standing there with an anxious look on his face. "I need to talk," he said urgently as soon as I opened the door. "What are you doing here?" I whispered harshly while glancing back at my husband who remained oblivious on the couch. I couldn't wait any longer. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation and closed the door behind him with a soft click that felt ominous in its finality. "Not now." I hissed under my breath as panic surged through me like electricity. "He'll hear you." "I know," he replied quietly but firmly. "But we have to decide what we're doing before your husband takes us both by surprise." The urgency in his voice sent chills down my spine. Every word felt like another thread pulling tighter around me until it became hard to breathe. Just then, we heard laughter from outside, neighbors enjoying their evening barbecue, and for a moment, it felt like we were living in two different worlds, one filled with laughter and warmth outside while ours simmered with tension inside. "I can't just leave," I whispered frantically as fear clawed at me again. The fear of losing everything or being discovered too late clawed at me relentlessly. "We could run away together," he suggested suddenly, his eyes alight with reckless hope that made me shiver with excitement and dread alike. The idea danced tantalizingly close yet felt impossible when reality loomed so large between us. "What about everything here?" My voice trembled despite myself. Visions of family gatherings and shared memories flashed through my mind like ghosts haunting every corner of this house. "We can figure it out later." His words hung heavy between us, filled with promise yet laced with danger, a dangerous allure that made it hard not to consider leaving everything behind for something unknown but thrilling. Just then, footsteps echoed down the hallway, the unmistakable sound of my husband approaching us, and panic surged anew within me like fire igniting dry grass ready to consume everything in its path. "I can't do this," I blurted out just as the door swung open behind me, revealing him standing there looking bewildered by our sudden closeness and tension hanging thickly in the air between us three, each one caught unaware by choices made and paths taken without foresight or care. "What's going on?" He narrowed his eyes suspiciously at us both. Confusion etched into his features made it clear he sensed something wasn't right, even if he couldn't put his finger on what exactly lay beneath our surface interactions fraught with unspoken secrets threatening to unravel all we'd built together over years spent, side by side navigating life together hand in hand until now. "I just wanted some advice," I stammered lamely, hoping against hope that would satisfy him enough not to dig deeper into whatever tangled web had formed around us without anyone realizing until far too late. As silence stretched uncomfortably between us all, my heart racing wildly against its cage, I knew one thing for certain: whatever happened next would change everything forever. The tension in the air was palpable. I could feel my heart pounding as I stood there, caught between two worlds. My nephew-in-law's eyes searched mine, a mix of concern and something deeper lurking beneath the surface. The reality of my situation crashed down on me like a wave. I had crossed a line, and now I had to navigate the consequences. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, but the truth was far more complicated than that simple gesture. My mind raced with thoughts of my husband, who would be home any moment. The idea of being caught filled me with dread. "We need to be careful," I warned him, my voice shaky. He stepped closer, his presence both comforting and dangerous. "I know," he replied softly. "But I can't help how I feel." The weight of his words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from my husband, on my way home early. "Can't wait to see you." Panic surged through me as I glanced at my nephew-in-law, whose expression mirrored my own alarm. "I have to go," I said urgently, backing away. "Please don't call or text me for a while." He looked hurt but nodded in understanding as I slipped past him and out the door. The sunlight felt blinding as I hurried down the street toward home, each step echoing the turmoil inside me. Once inside, I tried to regain some semblance of normalcy. My husband entered shortly after, his face lighting up at the sight of me. "You're home early," I exclaimed, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Had to wrap things up sooner than expected," he replied cheerfully as he set his briefcase down and moved closer to me. As we settled into our evening routine, dinner preparations and casual conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was unraveling just beneath the surface. My mind drifted back to the kiss we shared. It felt like a lifetime ago yet so fresh in my memory. Later that night, while washing dishes together, I felt a sudden urge to confess everything, the affair, the confusion, but fear held me back like an anchor weighing me down. Instead, I forced myself to laugh at something trivial he said about work. "Did you hear from your mom today?" he asked casually as he dried his hands on a towel. "No," I replied quickly, trying not to think about how she might react if she knew what was happening in our lives. Just then, another message pinged on my phone, a notification from social media showing a photo of my nephew-in-law enjoying time with friends at a bar nearby. My heart sank. It felt wrong to look at it while standing next to my husband. "Everything okay?" he asked again, noticing my sudden change in demeanor. "Yeah," I lied without conviction. "Just tired." As we settled into bed later that night, exhaustion washed over me like an unwanted wave. My husband snuggled up close, but instead of comfort, all I felt was guilt gnawing at me from within. How had things escalated so quickly? In that moment of quiet intimacy with him beside me, thoughts of running away with someone else seemed reckless yet alluring all over again, like glancing through an open door only to realize it might lead nowhere good. Then came another buzz from my phone, a call this time from an unknown number that sent chills down my spine. Hesitating for just a second too long made it clear that something wasn't right. Instinctively glancing toward my husband who still slept soundly beside me made it all too real. Secrets had no place in our home anymore. With trembling hands and racing thoughts swirling around inside me like storm clouds gathering on the horizon, I answered it anyway. "Hello?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence on the other end felt heavy, almost suffocating. Then, a familiar voice broke through. It was the nephew, his tone urgent yet gentle. "I need to see you. Can we meet?" My heart raced at the thought of him, but guilt gnawed at me. "Now?" I asked, glancing nervously at my husband's peaceful face. "Yes, it's important," he insisted. I agreed and quickly hung up, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. The weight of my choices pressed down on me like a thick fog. I needed to figure things out before they spiraled further out of control. As I slipped out of bed, I made sure to move quietly. The house felt eerily still as I tiptoed through the darkened hallway. My mind raced with thoughts of what this meeting could mean for both of us. Would it be about ending things? Or would we discuss our future? I arrived at the local cafe, its vintage decor offering a comforting backdrop amidst my turmoil. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as I spotted him at a corner table, his expression anxious yet hopeful. "I'm glad you came," he said softly as I sat down across from him. "I wasn't sure if I should," I replied honestly. "Things are complicated." He nodded, understanding etched on his face. "I get that," he said, leaning in slightly. "But we need to talk about what happens next." His vulnerability struck a chord within me. It made me question everything once again. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my husband. "Where are you?" Panic surged through me as I glanced back at the nephew, whose eyes widened in alarm. "You have to go," he urged quietly. "I can't just leave." I whispered fiercely but knew he was right. My heart sank as reality sank in. My double life was unraveling faster than I could manage. "I'll text you later," I promised quickly before standing up and rushing out of the cafe, leaving him behind with unanswered questions hanging in the air like smoke. Back home, my husband sat up in bed when I entered our bedroom, concern etched on his face. "You were gone longer than expected," he remarked casually but with an edge that made my stomach twist uncomfortably. "I lost track of time," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant while internally panicking about how much he might suspect already. He studied me for a moment before speaking again, his voice low and steady. "Who were you with?" The directness caught me off guard. Suddenly the walls felt like they were closing in around us. "No one important," I said too quickly, regretting it immediately as his eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Is that so?" He pressed further. There was no escaping this confrontation now. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again, a new message from the nephew lighting up the screen. "Can we talk tonight?" My heart raced as my husband leaned closer to see what had caught my attention. "What's that?" he asked sharply now. There was no denying it any longer. The truth was about to surface whether I liked it or not. "It's just a friend checking in," I lied instinctively while feeling sweat bead on my forehead from the tension mounting between us. His expression darkened. Frustration mixed with hurt flashed across his face as he demanded more clarity from me about who this friend really was. "I'm tired," was all that came out before turning away from him toward the window, a futile attempt to escape this moment that felt so inevitable now. The silence hung heavy between us until finally he sighed deeply and leaned back against the headboard, defeated but still wary of whatever secrets lay hidden beneath our fragile facade. "Let's talk when we're both calmer," he suggested reluctantly after what felt like an eternity had passed between us without resolution or understanding, just two people trapped by their own choices and fears. As night fell outside and shadows danced across our room walls like specters haunting memories long buried deep within our hearts, I realized that there would be no easy way out anymore. Consequences loomed ahead like storm clouds ready to unleash their fury upon everything we had built together over the years. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my husband bustling around the kitchen. The aroma of coffee filled the air, a familiar comfort that felt strangely out of place. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to gather my thoughts. My heart raced as I recalled the events of the previous night. The kiss with my nephew still lingered on my lips, a reminder of the thrill and danger that had crept into my life. "Are you getting up soon?" he called from downstairs, his voice cheerful and oblivious. I forced myself to respond, "Yes, just a minute." The words felt heavy in my mouth. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and took a deep breath. There was no turning back now, I had to face him. As I made my way to the kitchen, I noticed the newspaper spread across the table. An article caught my eye, an interview with a local couple celebrating their 50th anniversary. Their story seemed so perfect, so far removed from my reality. My husband poured me a cup of coffee and smiled warmly at me. "I thought we could go for a nice brunch today," he suggested. "Sounds lovely," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. My mind was elsewhere, tangled in thoughts of what could happen if he ever found out about my secret. After breakfast, we decided to take a walk around our neighborhood park before heading out for brunch. The sun shone brightly above us, but it did little to brighten my mood. As we strolled through the park, hand in hand, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off, that every laugh shared between us was tinged with an undercurrent of tension. Suddenly, I spotted someone across the park, my nephew laughing with friends near the playground. My heart sank as I recognized him. He looked carefree and happy, completely unaware of how complicated things had become for me. Just then, one of his friends approached him with excitement in his voice. "Did you tell her about our plans?" he asked loudly enough for me to hear from where we stood. My stomach dropped as dread washed over me. They were discussing their future together without any regard for what it meant for me or my family. "Let's go," I urged my husband gently, trying to divert his attention away from them. He nodded and led me toward a nearby cafe instead. Sitting down with our menus in hand felt like an escape from reality, a brief respite before facing whatever came next. But even as we ordered our food, anxiety bubbled beneath the surface like an uninvited guest crashing a party. After brunch, we returned home where mundane chores awaited us, laundry piled high and dishes needing attention, but all I could think about was how much longer this charade could continue without unraveling everything. Later that evening, while watching television together on the couch, a typical Saturday ritual, I received a text message that made my heart race again. It was from my nephew asking if we could meet later that week to discuss something important. "Who's texting you?" My husband glanced over at me curiously after catching sight of my startled expression. "No one," I replied quickly but felt guilty immediately after saying it. Lying felt wrong yet necessary at this moment. He shrugged and returned his focus back to the screen while I sat there feeling trapped between two worlds, one filled with comfort and familiarity and another pulsing with excitement but fraught with peril. Just then there was a knock at our front door. It startled both of us out of our thoughts. As I stood up to answer it cautiously, my heart racing again, I hoped against hope it wouldn't be anyone who might complicate things further. Opening the door revealed an unexpected visitor, one of our close friends who lived nearby, looking unusually serious as she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "I need to talk to you both," she said firmly before glancing between us nervously as if sensing something amiss in our dynamic. My stomach twisted into knots. Whatever she wanted couldn't possibly be good news, and yet part of me wondered if she somehow knew about everything. "We need to discuss something important," she continued quietly but firmly while glancing back towards her car parked outside as if checking for someone or something else waiting beyond sight. I exchanged worried looks with my husband, who seemed equally unsettled by her presence. Whatever revelation awaited us would undoubtedly change everything once again, and perhaps not in ways we could ever anticipate. The tension in the air was palpable as I stood there, caught between my husband and his sister. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. The last thing I needed was more complications, yet here we were. "I know about you and Alex," she said, her voice low but fierce. My heart sank. Had it really come to this? I glanced at my husband, who looked more confused than angry, as if he couldn't quite grasp the implications of her words. Before I could respond, she continued, "You think this is just a fling? It's not. You're playing with fire." Her eyes bore into mine, searching for a reaction. I felt exposed, stripped of any pretense of control I had managed to maintain. "Let's talk about this somewhere private," I suggested, my mind racing. The last thing I wanted was for my husband to overhear every detail of my betrayal. She nodded reluctantly and led me to the back patio where the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses faded into the background. As we settled into a tense silence, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I didn't mean for it to happen, I finally admitted. I was just lonely. The words hung in the air like an accusation against myself. Lonely doesn't justify hurting others, she countered sharply. You need to face what you've done before it spirals out of control. Her voice softened slightly as she added, Alex is moving away soon for a job opportunity. The news hit me like a punch in the gut. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more complicated, they did. My mind raced with thoughts of our time together, the stolen kisses and shared secrets, but now those memories felt tainted by impending loss. What am I supposed to do? I asked, desperation creeping into my tone. If he leaves, what does that mean for us? She sighed deeply, her expression shifting from anger to concern. You need to decide if you want honesty or deceit in your life. Her words struck me hard, they echoed in my mind like an urgent call to action. Suddenly, the back door swung open and my husband stepped out onto the patio. The moment froze as we exchanged startled glances. He must have sensed something was off between us. What's going on? He asked cautiously. Caught off guard by his unexpected arrival, my heart raced again as panic set in. Would he confront me about Alex? Did he already suspect? The weight of secrecy pressed down on me like a heavy blanket suffocating any chance of clarity. Just talking about family matters, I replied too quickly, forcing a smile that felt brittle on my lips. His gaze shifted between us suspiciously, but he didn't press further, yet. As he turned back toward the house, relief washed over me momentarily before dread took its place once again. How long could I keep this charade up? A part of me wanted to confess everything right then and there, but fear held me back like an anchor dragging me down. After dinner was over and guests began filtering out one by one, Alex sent a message that sent chills down my spine. Can we meet one last time before I leave? My fingers hovered over the screen as uncertainty flooded through me again. Should I say yes or cut ties completely? I glanced at my husband sitting across from me at the table, oblivious to the turmoil brewing within, and realized how much was at stake if I chose wrong this time around. Are you all right? He asked suddenly, breaking through my thoughts with genuine concern etched on his face. Just tired, I replied softly while forcing another smile. But inside, turmoil raged on. Should I choose honesty or let deceit wrap its tendrils around everything once more? As night fell and silence enveloped our home like a shroud, one thing became clear. Whatever choice lay ahead would change everything forever, and perhaps not in ways anyone could anticipate. The door creaked open, and I froze. My heart raced as I realized my husband had returned home earlier than expected. The tension in the air thickened, and I quickly glanced around the room for any signs of our secret. My nephew's presence lingered in my mind like a ghost, a reminder of our shared moments that now felt like a distant dream. Are you okay? My husband asked, concern etched on his face. His voice broke through my thoughts, grounding me back in reality. I nodded, forcing another smile despite the chaos brewing within. Just tired, I said again, hoping to deflect his probing gaze. He stepped closer, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for something amiss. The evidence of our connection felt palpable in the air, yet I couldn't let him see it. I thought we could have dinner together, he suggested lightly, attempting to bridge the gap that had widened between us. Sounds good, I replied quickly, trying to mask my unease. As he moved to prepare something in the kitchen, I took a moment to breathe deeply. My mind raced with thoughts of my nephew, our stolen kisses and whispered secrets echoing back to me. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the table, jolting me from my reverie. It was a message from him. Can we meet tonight? One last time before I leave. Panic surged through me as I realized how close we were to being discovered. My husband was still in the kitchen. I had no time to respond discreetly. "Who's that?" my husband asked suddenly, peering over at me with narrowed eyes. My heart dropped as I quickly tucked my phone away and forced a laugh. "Just a friend checking in," I lied smoothly. He seemed unconvinced but let it go for now. As we settled down for dinner, a simple pasta dish, I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging between us like an invisible barrier. Each bite felt heavier than the last as guilt gnawed at me from within. After dinner, while cleaning up together, my husband reached for a drawer where we kept miscellaneous items, bills and old receipts cluttered together haphazardly. My stomach twisted as he pulled out a crumpled note that had slipped beneath them, one of the love letters from my nephew that had been left behind during one of our encounters. "What's this?" he asked sharply, holding it up like evidence of a crime. My breath caught in my throat as dread washed over me. This was it, the moment everything would unravel. "It's nothing," I stammered, trying to regain control of the situation. "Nothing? This looks important." His voice rose slightly in disbelief as he unfolded it further, revealing words meant only for me, words that now threatened to destroy everything. "Please," I begged softly, desperation creeping into my tone. "It's just an old letter." His expression hardened as he processed what he was reading. "An old letter? From who?" Before I could answer or fabricate another lie, anger flared in his eyes, the kind that felt familiar yet foreign all at once. "You've been hiding something from me." I opened my mouth to protest but no words came out. All that remained was silence filled with tension and betrayal hanging heavily above us like storm clouds ready to burst. In that moment of heightened emotion, a mix of fear and regret, I knew there was no turning back now. Whatever lay ahead would change everything irrevocably. A loud bang echoed from outside, perhaps thunder or just a car door slamming, but it jolted us both back into reality amidst our brewing storm. He dropped the letter onto the table with force and stepped back as if distancing himself from what it represented, betrayal and heartbreak intertwined with every line written by someone else's hand. "I can't believe you would do this." His voice cracked slightly but held firm resolve, a declaration of war against secrets long kept hidden away from sight. As tears threatened to spill over at his accusation, adrenaline surged through me. Fight or flight instincts kicked in hard against this emotional onslaught threatening to engulf us both whole. "I didn't mean for any of this." The words tumbled out before I could stop them, an instinctual plea amidst chaos unfolding around us rapidly without mercy or pause for breath. But just then, the phone buzzed again on the table, a reminder that while one relationship crumbled before me, another still beckoned urgently for resolution before it too slipped away forever into oblivion. And just like that, the weight of everything hit harder than ever before. Choices made now bore consequences too heavy for any single person alone to carry forward into an uncertain future ahead.